Welcome to JavaScript webinar from JPassion.com. Today's topic is Dojo Ajax. We have already covered basic concepts of Ajax in Ajax Basics, and we also take a look Ajax implementation from prototype as well. So the concept-wise, I assume many of you have a reasonably good understanding of it. So we're going to just look into how Dojo handles Ajax. So let's go to the presentation. So we're going to take a look at Ajax with dojo.xhr calls and back button with the dojo.back. So let's take a look dojo.xhr functions. So this is the slide that you have seen before. The value of Ajax is that user have uninterrupted operation while data is being fetched from the server asynchronously behind the scenes. So this one is not using Ajax, so there is an interruption here in Ajax. Things are being handled behind the scene asynchronously. So these are dojo.xhr calls. So basically it hides the complexity of XML HTTP request operation. So it provides high-level abstraction for performing asynchronous operations. And besides, it handles browser incompatibilities for you. And these are the XHR calls. As you can see, these calls represent the HTTP method get, post, and delete, and put. So XHR get, so it's basically for performing asynchronous HTTP get operation, and just like you have seen in prototype Ajax request, the parameters are pretty much the same. Okay, so these are URL where you are sending the request to. Handle as is basically when you receive the data from the server, it will convert it into either text, JSON object, or JavaScript. It's just execution of it in XML. Okay, and the content is query parameters, and the load is a callback function that gets invoked when data is received from the server successfully, and error is error handler. So let's take a look at the example code. So here we are going to have a target node, and then we create first of all XHR arguments object. So you can see this is a JavaScript object with a set of properties and their values. So URL is again the destination where it's actually sending this request to, and in this case it could be just a simple local file. And here I'm actually getting it as a text, and then this load function is invoked when data is received from the server successfully. So it's basically replace whatever things with this. And then it's basically replacing this data with these things. Okay, it's just doing escape, and then it will just set the data into inner HTML to the target node. This is a function call that gets invoked when there is an error. Okay, and call the asynchronous get. So this is the way that you are in fact making a call passing this argument object. So dojo.xhr get, and then you pass the argument object. Okay, and you return the dojo default object. So usually you actually work with this default object when you actually set these functions later on. Okay, but since we have set these functions as part of the arguments, this is not probably necessary. Okay. Let's see. Can you hear me? Okay. So let's see. Hora is actually sending a message that he cannot hear anything. Okay, so people seems to be here okay. All right, okay, good, excellent. Hopefully my voice is reasonably loud enough for you to listen. Okay, moving forward. This is a case that you are going to send query parameters. So here, when you have this content property with the key value pairs, you're basically sending URL with this. So URL and question mark and set of parameters to the server. Okay, so that is content. And XHR post is you are sending HTTP post request instead of HTTP GET request. So typically you're going to use XHR post when you have a form data that you want to send to the server. So here you are going to, so here you can actually create an argument object with a form property, and form property is actually representing that form. Now in this case you don't have to specify URL because XHR post, later on you're going to actually use XHR post, will figure out what is the URL is actually sending data to, because form should have action attribute where you specify your destination. Okay. Alright, so let's do some of these hands-on labs. So here we are going to go to our hands-on lab here. So we're going to actually do a bunch of hands-on labs here. Okay, so here we're going to actually perform Ajax operation with XHR get. Okay, so let's run the application like this, and we're going to click it, and then we're going to see the actual data. Okay, and you can actually see the data like this. Okay, all right, I am going to run it. So this is the one. I'm going to actually use a Firefox. You can use either Chrome or Firefox because the documentation is created using Firefox. So I'm going to actually use a Firefox for the demo. Okay, and I'm going to just install it first. And we are going to run it. Okay, starting Tomcat server. Oh, okay, so I'm actually using Firefox. Okay, so here I'm gonna just open Firefox debugger, and if I click it, and then it's not working. Yeah, I should actually display alert message. So let me just clean it, and I'll rebuild. And maybe install again. And I'm gonna just make sure that just clean this down. And then I'm going to run it again. Okay, so while we're actually waiting for this, let me see a question. Is there any drawback of using post requests for Ajax over get request? Yeah, it's the same deal whether you are actually sending Ajax enabled HTTP request or non-Ajax enabled HTTP request. So get is actually useful because it's idempotent, meaning you can actually call it many times without any consequences on the server. Post it is actually used to change something on the server side, so it's not idempotent. Okay, so you know those are actually the major differences. Let me see. Why am I having any issues with this one? Let me try a different one. I'm gonna actually try handle this one. Yeah, I'm gonna show the code after I actually run this. Okay. What server are you using for this? I see all three servers, Glassfish, Tomcat, and JPassion. You can use any server of your choice. I happen to use Tomcat. So these are just the web applications, so you can run it on any servlet container, meaning any app server of your choice. Okay, so it works. All right, so you can see it's actually sending the data here, and you can see it's actually sending the HTTP request, in this case test text, and the response is this. So I'm going to actually show you this code first, and then most of the code is actually pretty similar. So I'm going to just show this code first, and then okay, so this is the I basically have a button, and when I click it, it calls this function. And here is actually a very simple XHR get. So it's basically getting text file, and it's supposed to just display alert message with that response. Okay, so that is the first. And the second one is this time we create an arguments object. So instead of actually passing this object directly here, as we've done in the first example, here we create an argument object, meaning the JavaScript object, and assign into args, and then we pass args. Okay, so exactly the same logic, but just passing an argument object that has been created here. Okay, so now handle as is the one that I just run. So let's actually see this will actually handle. So in this case, let's see this code. Actually, you know what? I'm going to just use the lab documentation so that we can see some highlighted code. So the one that we just run it was handle as. Okay, so this is the first one, and it should actually return like this. And this is the code that I just shown you. That's the first one. And the text file is just this. Okay, so if you actually see the text file, I have a text file right here. This text file. Okay, it's just returning this text file. And if you actually change this one to a different value, then error will be returned. Okay, so you see error occurred, unable to load test 4.4, and you can see it's a 4.4 error, and you can see the error message is displayed. Error occurred is actually from this error handler. Okay. Okay, so this is the one that I showed you. Instead of passing the JavaScript object directly anonymously, we actually create the JavaScript object before passing it as an argument object. I'm passing as just assigning to variable, then pass it a variable. Okay, so this is the one that we just did. Okay, so you can actually use a handle. So instead of load and error, you can use handle method like this, and then you can actually check whether the response is either instance of error or not. If it is an error, then it is you just display error message as an alert. If it is a success, then you're going to display the success. Yeah, so this is rarely used. I mean, it's better to have this load and error separate properties. Okay, so that is what we just run. The next one is the handle as. So we are actually setting. Let's see the code, and then we're going to run this this example. So here you are actually retrieving text.xml file. Okay, this is the destination. So it's basically getting test.xml file, and then you're actually receiving it as an XML. What that means is that you are asking Dojo underneath, basically XML HTTP request, to convert whatever it received from the server into XML object. Okay, so here when you are actually trying to handle it, it is an XML object. It is in fact a DOM, so you can actually now use DOM APIs like a get elements by tag name and first element and child node and things like that. Okay, so that is so it's basically getting name and hobby. Okay, and this is XML file of test XML. Okay, so let's try that. So this one. So if you take a look at here, this is the test XML file. Okay, that is being returned from the server. Well, actually, in this case, we are just getting the XML file. Now, if you take a look at this code, this is what I just to show you. Okay, so we are receiving it as an XML, meaning by the time your handler is invoked, this object is DOM object. Because it's parsed and created as a DOM object. Okay, so let's run this code. So, question from Karsten. So, what is the advantage of using handle, or why have it at all? Good question. Yeah, it's not that much useful. Okay, so I'm gonna just display Firebug debugger, and now if I click it and it returns the data. Now if you actually see the last the HTTP request is actually, you can see it's actually trying to get test XML file. Okay, and you can see it is the server actually returned this data. Okay. So that XML is received. I mean, this data is actually received as actually a string from the server text string, but local Dojo XML HTTP request is converting this string into XML object, so you can actually treat it as an XML DOM object. Okay, so let's move on. The next is now we're actually trying to handle as JSON. Okay, so here this is actually an interesting case. We are actually receiving XML from the server. Well, actually, it's actually being still received as a text. Okay, and but the text is basically XML file. Okay, now we handle as a test, and what we want to do is we want to convert it into JSON. So here we have to call some JavaScript function. So we are actually using XML2 JSON library, and then we are calling parser, the method of it, and sending this response, because this response is the text format of XML data. And then once you got the my JSON object, then you can actually access just like a JSON object. So I can actually call person.name, person.hobby, and things like that. Okay, so here we actually are involving 3 different formats. So the server is sending XML data in a form of text. So on the locally, you receive as a text, but you want to convert it into JSON. So you're actually calling this XML to JSON to parser method, and you got the JSON object. Okay, so hopefully that is clear enough. Well, so if you want to receive it just the JSON, then you want to actually change this one to JSON, and then you should be able to just call the name like this. So we'll have to change that code and do the exercise. So that is this code. So let's run this code. Yeah, true. I don't have to restart the server, you're right. Did I actually install it? Yeah, looks like I have to install this time and run the server. Yeah, sometimes it happens, so I have to restart the server. So question from Michael, can it handle external HTTP calls, HTTPS calls, credentials such as to Amazon REST services? The answer is yes. I mean, Ajax call is basically the server doesn't even know that this is, from a client actually sending HTTP requests using Ajax. It's just HTTP request. So, the client can actually send whatever HTTP request, including HTTPS request over SSL. Okay. All right. So let me just, so here, as you can see, we are still receiving data in the form of XML. Okay, and it worked as expected. And the code here is, so we are going to actually change code so that we are going to actually receive it as the JSON object. Okay, so again, this is the code. We receive it as a text, so we have to convert it into XML to JSON and parser. By the way, I'm actually using this XML to JSON JavaScript library written by Thomas Frank. Okay, so basically, this is a JavaScript object, and then it has a parser method. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to change this code. let's see here. I'm going to change this one to JSON. Okay. Now, if I run this code as it is, it's not going to work because now, this response at this point is a JSON object. Okay. So, you do not want to convert into this one because it's not XML. Okay. So so let's actually try to run this one, see how it behaves. Okay. Okay, so now if I click it, the XSplit is not functioning. Some kind of error is happening because if you actually see console here, yeah, looks like it didn't show errors. Okay, so it didn't show. Yeah, it is not an error. It's just the I guess it's just kind of returned this error information from when you call the parser method. Okay, so what we want to do is, we actually receive this as a JSON object. So in this case, we don't have to parse it. So I'm going to comment this out. Okay. And now because this response is actually the JSON object that represents this person, I should be able to just say, here, I'm going to just say response and response. Okay, like this. And then it should work. Okay. Okay, now it's compiled. Now let's actually run it. And click it. This time it worked. Okay. All right. So hopefully that gives you a sense of how this this handle as is working. Okay, so this handle as is basically representing, what you want your the Dojo, the runtime is actually doing for you for converting the type of, converting the data that it received from the server into the type you want. Okay. Okay, so that is handle as. So now I'll actually go back to. So we just this. Okay. Now we are going to try content as. Okay, so this time, we're actually sending to respond destination, and we are receiving text. Now we are sending content, so we are basically sending param1 country and param2. Okay, so it will result in sending a URL question mark param1 equal country, and then param2 equal Korea. Okay, and server-side code is very simple. It will just return the parameters that it has received. Okay, so it will just take the parameter that it has received, param1 and the param2, and it will just respond back as a text. Okay, very simple code. Okay, all right. So let's run this code, and you can actually see this request like this, and you can see the params as well, and then you can see param1 country and param2 Korea. Okay, so let's run this by. Question from Appa. The JSON example, should we call response.person.name? No. The thing is that response itself is representing person object, okay, already. So you have to actually use dot name rather than dot person dot name. Okay, so we just build it, and now let's try to run it. Question from Michael: which JSP Eclipse plugin are you using? I'm not using any special Eclipse plugin. I'm just using WTP plugin that actually handles all the web application development. Okay, so let's just fire up. Okay, and then I click it, and successful response. So this is what is returned from the server, and I'm just displaying it. So if I take a look at the what has been returned, so this is the last request. So here you can see it's passing param1 equal country and param2 equal Korea. And if you take a look at the response, yeah, so this is the response that was returned from the server. Okay. So this is what we just saw. Okay, so this is a case that we use content to send parameters, then receive the JSON response. Okay, so here we are receiving as a JSON. Okay, so again, when you receive as a JSON object, you are going to be able to use the dot notation. So you can just use dot param1 and dot param2. Okay. So so as Michael's question was, it's kind of confusing. Why is not in this case, like so if you take a look at the yes, it's actually the server side is actually creating this JSON object. Okay, so here you can access param1 directly. Okay, so yeah, in the case of the person case, let's actually go back to the previous example. I'm actually trying to show you here. Yeah, so when you're using the, so in this case is the root is person. Oh, this is the case is an XML. Okay, so it's a little bit different. Okay. Okay, so that is the case that we are receiving is as a JSON. Okay. All right, so the last one is we are now using XHR post. So here we have a form. So let's see the code. So we have in this case, we're actually sending, yeah, so this is not even using a form, so we're actually basically calling as XHR post. And in this case, the content will be actually sent inside the post body. Okay, so typically you are going to use XHR post for sending form data. Okay, and that form data will be actually sent as post, data. In this case, we are actually simulating that form data with the content in a sense. Okay, so let's run that code. So this is the last one. Okay, now let's run the code. Can you just keep the slide for a minute? Yeah, I'll do that. So it will work pretty much the same, except that you can see it's sending it as a post. Okay, so it comes back with, this from the server. Now if you go all the way down to what has been sent, you can see this is the post message. Okay, and you can see what contains. This is a post body. Okay, so and response is again same data coming from the server. Okay, so that is that. Now the next exercise is we are going to actually try to change Ajax validation sample application to use Ajax. Okay, so we are going to actually change one by one. So let's actually take a look at the example. I'm going to actually show you the code using the hands-on lab documentation. Okay, so you're going to import this Ajax validation XHR project. So this is the same project that you have run when you do Ajax basics hands-on app. Okay, so it's using the low-level XML HTTP request object at the moment, and we want to change the code to use Dojo Ajax. Okay, so it should work like this. Okay. And you can just create a new project if you want to. Okay. So let's actually see the code. So what we want to do is we want to comment out this code. Okay, so anything in red colors are old code that you want to remove. And now since you're using Dojo, you're going to actually add Dojo, the library, dojo.js. This is a cross-domain library. Okay, all right, so then here validate user. So let's actually take a look at the from the beginning. So this code was actually using XML HTTP request directly yourself, and you have to actually do create XML HTTP request differently depending on whether you are using Internet Explorer or not. Okay, and then you create the URL. okay, and then you're actually sending it using XML HTTP request. Again, this is pretty low level API you're dealing with. So instead of using XML HTTP request directly, we are going to use Dojo. So here we are going to get the target, okay, and then we are going to use XHR get, okay. So we create the URL, okay, with the value in target, and then we are going to receive the data in the form of XML. Timeout is 5,000 milliseconds, and then the callback, successful callback function is process request, okay, and this is error code. When we have an error, we're going to just alert with Dojo error alert, and this process request is pretty much the same logic, well actually same logic, but we are actually dealing with a bit higher level abstraction here. In old code, you have to deal with ready status, ready state, and the status field of XML HTTP request directly, but instead you are going to just get the data that is received from the server successfully, and since it's an XML, and we are just we regard it as a DOM object, and then we perform some DOM APIs, okay, and then set message using DOM is simplified. Again, we are just using inner HTML, okay. All right, so that is the code. So we're going to actually run the dojo1.get, okay. Question from Dorothy. On success and error handlers, how do you know the appropriate arguments to pass? So the functions should actually take the arguments in order, and you don't have to actually pass all the arguments in JavaScript. So in a sense, it supports a variable number of arguments. Okay, so this one worked pretty much the same way, okay, as we expected, okay, and you can see it is actually sending this data to the server, okay. All right, so same as far as the traffic is concerned, it should look the same regardless whether you are using HTTP request, XML HTTP request directly or using Dojo, okay. All right, so that is that. Now we are going to use DOM manipulations. So here, so this is pretty straightforward usage of Dojo by ID. So instead of using get element by ID, I'm actually using Dojo by ID. Okay, and here so this one is a little bit simplified as well. Okay, and so basically using DOM simplified Dojo APIs, DOM APIs to access the element. Okay, so yeah, I guess mainly we are using Dojo by ID, not that much of a big deal. So I'm going to just move ahead, and actually 2.5 is actually looks like I actually deleted some pictures here. Okay. So I have to actually put old pictures. I delete all the old pictures, but it looks like I deleted one. Okay. 2.6 is experiment with handle as. Again, we already have dealt with handle as quite a bit, so I assume you have a reasonably good idea. So here we are going to handle as a text. So in that case, what you're going to receive is a text, meaning you have to parse it, right? So here basically you're using the you're going to use Dojo X data dump text content, and then basically create the DOM object using this. Okay, let's see, that is handled as. Oh, okay, so that is basically, because it doesn't handle, we are basically just checking this information. And then we are going to change it to actually handle it correctly. So here, check if data string contains true or not. So, basically we are using regular expression to check whether that the text contains the true or false. Okay. So that is handled as exercise. So let's just try that. What does cross-domain means in terms of security? You mentioned that in Dojo 1.6 API from Google is cross-domain. Yes. So if you actually see this code, this in 1.6, if you want to use a cross-domain version of Dojo.js, then you have to actually use Dojo.xd.js. It's a special version that is capable of being cross-domained. Okay, in 1.7, the CDN, without using XD, it is actually the cross-domain version by default. Okay. So I'm going to talk about cross-domain concept in another topic here. So we are going to cover cross-domain and JSON-P as one of the topics. So I'll actually spend some time on explaining the concept of same origin policy, and then cross-domain and things like that. Okay. All right, so I was actually running this guy. Okay, so let's see whether we okay, this is a form. Did I run this guy again? What does Maven install do? Maven install is basically building your application, and then it will actually install it in your local repository. So you basically, you can think of it as like a build your application as well. Okay, and it works as expected. So in this case, again, we are receiving in the form of the XML, then we just kind of using regular expression to see whether that is actually true or false. Okay, and it works as expected. Okay, the next one is form. Let's see. Okay, so we are going to have a form here. So we actually provide an ID for that form. Okay, and then we are going to specify the URL validate, and then we specify form property. Okay, and then passing the my form. Okay, so. And here you don't have to actually pass the target value, because the form data, the form is going to actually capture the data that is being entered into form input fields. Okay. All right, and here we are basically still receiving in terms of text, and we are still doing some regular expression checking to see whether it contains true or false. Okay. All right, so let's try to run that code. And the result is pretty much the same. Question: in Maven, does build mean compile and install mean create and deploy WAV file? No. I recommend you take a look at the Maven presentation in development tools course in JPassion.com. So here we have the development tools here. So we cover 3 topics in Maven. Okay. So I recommend you to take a look at this hands-on lab and recording. But just to answer your question, yeah, build is basically compilation, and install means that you create a WAV file and then you also install your local repository. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna actually finish up right here. It's like